Well, good morning, everyone. So good to see all of you this morning. Those of you joining us in person, those of you joining us online. It's good to be back together and worshiping together this morning. I invite you to stand and join us as we sing some praise together.
The God who evermore will be. He opened the prison doors, He parted the raging sea. My God, He holds the victory. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. And we won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. We won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. We sing to the God who heals. We sing to the God who saves. We sing to the God who always makes a way. Because He hung up on that cross, then He rose up from that grave. My God's still rolling stones away. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. And we won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. We won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. We were the beggars, now we're royalty. We were the prisoners, now we're running free. We are forgiven, accepted, redeemed by His grace. Let the house of the Lord sing praise. 'Cause we were the beggars, now we're royalty. We are the prisoners, now we're running free. We are forgiven, accepted, redeemed by His grace. Let the house of the Lord sing praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. And we won't keep quiet. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. And we won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. And we won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. We won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. We shout out your praise. There is joy in this house. There is joy in this house today. Every breath, it is a gift. Every moment is a treasure. All my past and my regrets, my present and my future. Every table is a feast, every heartbeat is an altar. Every step a mystery, and I'm walking with the author. So I fix my eyes upon you, I fix my eyes upon you. So I fix my eyes upon you, I fix my eyes. All praise, all praise. Heaven bent to meet us, Father, Son, and Spirit. All praise, all praise. God and us together, one with us forevermore. In famine we will eat, in drought we'll see a downpour. So let all our fighting cease, the Prince of Peace has conquered. So I fix my eyes upon you, I fix my eyes upon you. So I fix my eyes upon you, I fix my eyes. All praise, all praise. Heaven bent to meet us, Father, Son, and Spirit. All praise, all praise. God and us together, one with us forevermore. Why should my heart grow weary? Don't be so downcast, oh my soul. You are in every moment. You are my greatest miracle. Why should my heart grow weary? And don't be so downcast, oh my soul. You are in every moment. You are my greatest miracle. Why should my heart grow weary? Don't be so downcast, oh my soul. You are in every moment. You are my greatest miracle. Why should my heart grow weary? Don't be so downcast, oh my soul. You are in every moment. You are my greatest miracle. All praise, all praise. Heaven bent to meet us, Father, Son, and Spirit. All praise, all God and us together, one with us forevermore. Why should my heart grow weary? Don't be so downcast, oh my soul. You are in every moment. You are my greatest miracle.
The Old Testament lesson today comes from Genesis chapter 29, verses 15 through 28. Then Laban said to Jacob, "Because you are my kinsman, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Tell me, what shall your wages be?" Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the elder was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah's eyes were lovely, and Rachel was graceful and beautiful. Jacob loved Rachel, so he said, "I will serve you 7 years for your younger daughter Rachel." Laban said, "It is better that I give her to you than that I shall give her to any other man. Stay with me." So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and then seemed to him but a few days because of the love he had for her. Then Jacob said to Laban, "Give me my wife, that I may go into her, for my time is completed." So Laban gathered together all the people of the place and made a feast. But in the evening he took his daughter Leah and brought her to Jacob, and he went into her. Laban gave his maid Zilpah to his daughter Leah to be her maid. When morning came, it was Leah. And Jacob said to Laban, "What is this you have done to me? Did I not serve with you for Rachel? Why then have you deceived me?" And Laban said, "This is not done in our country, giving the younger before the firstborn. Complete the week of this one, and we will give you the other also in return for serving me for another 7 years." Jacob did so and completed her week. Then Laban gave him his daughter Rachel as a wife. Holy words, holy wisdom.
Be to God. I'm tired, I'm worn, heart is heavy from the work it takes to keep on breathing. I've made mistakes,
Would you join me in prayer? God, all too often we find we run into those who would deceive us, trick us. The temptation is to turn about and do the same to them or to others. But God, you see us. You see when we are less than genuine and when we lash out in frustration. When we give in to this temptation, we deceive and disappoint. Help us, O God, to step back and be patient, to resist acting out our frustration. Help us to see ourselves clearly that we may more clearly live into the image that you have for us. Help us to see others with the patient and loving eyes that you have for all of us. Today, this is our prayer. Amen. I invite you to be seated.
Young disciples in the house? Young disciples in the house. I heard a couple. Let's have a chat. Come on, let's get comfy here. Did you guys hear that prayer that Corey just prayed? But God, you see us was part of that prayer that he read. And you know, in our sermon, we're going to talk a little bit about blind spots, which means that you can't see because it's in a spot where you can't see. But I was thinking about what it means to see people, right? So can you see everybody in this room? Yeah. But do you know everybody in this room? Probably, maybe not. No. Good answer, Sam. Yeah, so if you notice that I was like running in and out a lot, like when we were singing song, because I was thinking, my whole idea changed while they were singing this song, and I saw this prayer coming up. And I thought, we can see everybody, but how do we really know everybody? And one of the ways you guys are doing today, because you guys just did something really cool. What did you do that makes today just a little bit different? What did you do when you came today? Yeah. Hint, hint. You got name tags today, right? You guys a couple Sundays ago put in one of these little orange things and said, "Hey, I want to be somebody who's not only seen but known, and I want to make sure that people can get to know me, and it helps if they know my name, right?" And so you guys are wearing name tags today, and most everybody here is wearing a name tag. And some people might be looking out and saying, "Oops, I forgot to go." And so for those of you who might have forgot to walk to the name tag station and put your name tag on, right? But what if you don't have a name tag? Maybe you should get one. That's the exact right answer. So if you don't even have a name tag, but you want to make sure that you get to know people, what can you do? You can do what your mom and dad did, right? Which is fill out one of these little cards. So we could look out here and say, does anyone not have a name tag and want to have a name tag? What, you want to ask them that, Sam? Once you stand up and say, does anybody need a name tag? Stand up and say that. Does anybody need a name tag? Raise your hand if you need to get a name tag filled out. And Sam will bring you an orange card. There's one right over there. Can you take that? There you go. But what if maybe you're just visiting? And maybe, you're not sure if you're going to be back because you're from out of town or you're just visiting, but you want to make sure that people know you. What else could we do? We could just put a sticker on that has their name, right? Does anybody want to put a sticker on that has their name on it? And if you tell us your name, I will write it down and Sam will bring it out to you. Would you do that? Yeah, Sam said he would. So anybody want a name on a name tag that you don't have one on? Tell me a name, and I'll bring that name to you. Mindy. How do you spell Mindy? M-I-N-D-Y? Mindy. And Chris with a C-H-R-I-S? Oh, you've got a big job. All right, there's Mindy's and Chris's. I saw more than that. There's Nate with an N-A-T-E. Anybody else want one? Jason and Kim, would you like one? Can you take that to Jason and Kim? Zoe, do you think you could deliver one with Dad to Nate? She may not come back. That's okay. We're almost done here. How about Brian? Brian, would you like one today? No, Brian will wait and have a permanent one made. Oh, you'd love one? He's mouthing words that I can't lip read. All right, one more. Any others? Because everybody who wants one should get one. Okay, I don't see any more hands. Okay, so that'll do. All right. And so remember that when we see someone's name tag, that helps us get to know them. And so maybe somebody might come up to you today because you're wearing your name tag and say, "Hello, Sam. I know your name now, and we're going to get to know each other," right? And maybe you can start to practice doing that too, all right? Also, so would you say a prayer with me? Dear God, we thank you that you always see us and that you know us. Help us to know each other and to love everyone. Amen. All right, thanks. You guys had a big job to do. Thank you so much. Oh my goodness. A lot going on there. Confession. I just did not know what to talk about today because there was so much that we could do with that text that our team just read. It's the story of Laban. Laban said to Jacob, and so Laban is Jacob's uncle. Jacob has gone to his extended family. Laban is his mother, Rebekah's brother. But the reason why Jacob is there and all that stuff that you heard about working for Laban for 7 years and then another 7 years so that he can marry. One of the things that they told me, I'm pausing there, put a pin in that. One of the things that they told me is like, we're not going to process the differences between the ancient culture and our today's culture, especially around social aspects and rights and those things. Because if you look at this is his first cousin. This is what it is. It is what it is. And we're not going to kind of stand in those places. We're going to look for something else to take apart. But Jacob has gone to Laban. He's working for him. His uncle sounds very generous at first and says, you shouldn't be working for me even though I've invited you here into my home and given you hospitality. You shouldn't be working for me free. What would you like for payment? And Jacob says, well, how about a wife? There's a few around. But he already had his eye on Rachel. Pretty Rachel. And Leah is not represented in quite such a descriptive, appealing way. And we'll just, we'll leave sort of the problems with that alone. But the reason why he's there, we go back a couple weeks. If you remember last Sunday, in fact, for those who are sort of dropping in for the first time, I always feel like this is like a Netflix seasonal episode, right? If you're dropping into the seventh episode in the series, you're kind of like, eh. And so very often, in our television streaming shows, they're very helpful and give you just a few recaps to kind of catch you up. So, and I've done that every week. I felt like it's pretty important. So we started way back on the first Sunday after Pentecost with, or the second Sunday after Pentecost actually, with the story of Abraham and Sarah and God promising Abraham and Sarah that, well, first asking them to go away from where they are. And they're in, actually, Padam Aram. It's actually where they start out from. And this is where actually Jacob has gone back to. There's all these ties. It says, go to this place there, I will tell you. So they go away, and then God, in the midst of this journey, God promises that God will make them a great nation, and their children will be like the stars in the sky, the sands of the ocean, innumerable. So God promises this great nation, and then we have been actually following this journey of not only Abraham and Sarah and all the complications of their story, and then Isaac and Rebekah, Abraham's one son and daughter-in-law. And now we move to the third generation, Jacob and Esau, and their story. And 2 weeks ago, Pastor Corey preached about Jacob and Esau sort of making this hangry bargain. You know, Esau comes in from hunting, and Jacob has. There must be a lot of good cooks in this family, because there's a couple different places where food really plays an important part, and I'm going to name one in just a minute. But Esau comes back in from hunting, and Jacob has made this red stew, it says. I'm thinking it's this delicious Mediterranean dal or something like that. And Jacob says, well, I'll give you a bowl of this stew. You're so hungry if you give me your birthright. You give me your inheritance. This guy must have been really hungry, because he traded basically his whole future for some evidently pretty good stew. So this is the first time that Jacob and Esau sort of are going to have a little bit of some bargaining. The second time comes, this is all important, the second time comes just a few verses down the road, and we get to chapter 27. And I'm saying this because last week I talked a little bit about Jacob's dream, and Jacob is on his way. Are you following me here? Jacob is on his way to the old country, to Padam Aram, where he is going to meet up with Laban, which is our text today. But there's so much that happens in between, because the reason why Jacob was on his way there was because he was fleeing from Esau. And all that part that we skipped and left out is pretty important for today's context. So in chapter 27, it tells about how Isaac is starting to get old. It says his eyes are starting to get weak, and he's realizing that he better pass on that birthright and that blessing to Esau, the older son. Even though Esau and Jacob are twins, Esau just had the good fortune of pushing his way out of the womb first, and so he gets the goods, he gets the deal, he gets the birthright. But Jacob evidently is a pretty ambitious fella, and so he's already traded it, but evidently Isaac doesn't know this, doesn't know this deal has been made, and so he calls Esau and says, let me give you this blessing before I die. I'm going to bless you. And he says, but, let's make this kind of a festive affair. Why don't you go out to the countryside and hunt some game and make me some good food, and we'll do this upright. Now, Rebekah, mom of Mama's boy, Jacob, overhears this and says, hey, your dad's about to give your brother the blessing. Let's take it. You have to read this. I mean, you have to read this in the Bible. Go back and read 27 and 28 and 29 and 30 and 31 and 32 and 33 and 34. It's awesome. It is like a telenovela. It is like a soap opera. It is all those things. So she cooks up this deal, no pun intended, well, a little bit, and she says, go out and get a young goat. So this is going to sort of suffice as this animal that Esau is supposed to be out hunting, and I'm going to cook it up the way your dad likes, just the way he likes it, and then you're going to go bring it to him. And Jacob says, Mom, we cannot pull this off. my brother's hairy. They said this. They actually said this when he was born. My brother's this hairy fella, and I'm smooth-skinned. And he's going to recognize that it's not Esau. And she says, leave it to me, and I will take the curse. I will take the hit for this. She actually says that. Just do it. So he does. And she makes the food, and she gives him a bowl, and she said, take this into your father and say, I've come for my blessing. And old, eyes are not great, old Isaac leans in and says, is that you? Maybe he hears the voice that sounds a little wrong, and he says, yes, it's me. And he gives him the food, and the food tastes great. And then he goes to bless him. He says, come in closer, my son, that I may know that it's you, Esau. Jacob says, yes, it's me. And he leans in because mom has not only taken this young kid that she's made this stew from and used the meat for the food, but she takes the skin and she has placed it on strategic parts of his body where dad might just check out where he is or is not the evidence of that. And so he is hairy because he's put this kid skin. I mean, this is pretty devious. This is all in there. I'm not making this up. So Jacob receives the blessing from the father. Moments later, cut scene. Esau coming in from the countryside, then walking into the tent with this stew that he has made. And says, Dad, here is what you asked me to do. And Isaac says, what? Wait a minute. I just gave away the blessing. It must have been your brother. And Esau, mortified of this, there's a couple things, there's a problem that I think about right here, right? One of them is that, had Esau clearly did not intend to hold up that deal that he made before when he had traded the birthright for the pot of stew anyway. So we have a lot of, kind of dishonest brokers in this deal already, right? We've got Esau and Jacob and all the ways that they have been kind of wrangling with this, and we have mom in the mix of all this, and now dad's got to figure out what to do because he's made a mistake, but he's been tricked, and he of course has no idea that all of this has been going on evidently. And so Esau is furious. And he says to Jacob, do you have no blessing left for me? Have you given everything away? And Isaac says, yeah, pretty much. And he begs his father, give me some blessing. And this is what his father said. Then Isaac answered him, see, away from the fatness of the earth shall your home be, and away from the dew of heaven on high. By your sword you shall live, and you shall serve your brother, but when you break loose, you shall break his yoke from your neck. Doesn't sound like much of a blessing. You're still going to be subservient to your brother, he says, but eventually you'll break free of that. Essentially, he just asserted what already was. Have you ever had a backhanded compliment? This is a backhanded blessing. One of those backhanded compliments is one of those things like, oh, you do look skinny today. As if, or something like that, right? This is a backhanded blessing. And so then Esau says aloud, that I will soon bury my father. My father is not yet long to live, and when he's gone, I will take revenge. So mom hears all this and says to Jacob, your brother has it out for you. He's going to kill you. Why don't you go visit your uncle, my brother, go back to the old country, Padan Aram, and hang out there for a while. And then she has this idea. Now this isn't in. I'm kind of writing this into the text because then we move into chapter 28. And that was all in chapter 27. Read 27. And it begins by Isaac calling Jacob in, and as if nothing has happened, and he says, you shall not marry one of the Canaanite women. Go at once to Padan Aram, to the house of Bethuel, your mother's father, and take as a wife one of the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother. May God Almighty bless you and make you fruitful and numerous, that you may become a company of many peoples, and so on and so forth. Go and so mom must have kind of like set this up for dad to kind of give this blessing to send Jacob away, and so she's got this all fixed. And so Jacob heads out to Padan Aram, and that's where we picked up last week, where he, on the way, stops, lays down the pillow, has that dream of heavenly beings going up and down on this ladder. And today we find ourselves then in Padan Aram, and this whole story around Jacob's time there, his service to his uncle, himself being tricked. He thinks he's going to work 7 years and marry the one who he has fallen in love with, the beautiful one of the two daughters, or so it seems to be said, but instead has to work another 7 years. And I was telling another pastor friend of mine what I was going to preach about today, and he said, karma's and I said, can I say that word? And he said, yeah, I think you can. I said, I don't think I can. We could think about that concept of, it's actually an ancient Sanskrit word, and some of the ideas of this notion actually emerge from this same region and have connections to our Judeo-Christian roots as well. This idea of, we kind of synthesize it in our society as what goes around comes around, right? Galatians says, you shall reap what you sow. And it would be easy to kind of look at all of that and say, well, maybe this is kind of what we think about today. But there's a problem with that, which is that it is not always true, right? I think that's why we have the story of Job in the Bible, because Job did not get what came around. Job was the exact opposite. And for those who may remember, if you've taken intro to the Old Testament, one of the things that we're often told is some of the stories of Job are some of the oldest in the biblical narrative, and may actually precede some of the other storytelling that has gone into our sacred book. So we know, even just by life experience looking around, that what goes around does not always come around. And so the question is sort of, where is God in that, especially in the unfairness of that? So I don't want to lean into that. And so I thought, what do we do with this? And the other thing that I realized was that next week we're going to talk about Jacob wrestling. And when Jacob will wrestle, and so I'm kind of getting ahead, I'm going to give you, this is the preview of what the upcoming episode is that I usually give at the end of the episode. Next week on What Will They Do in Genesis? Next week on What Will They Do in Genesis, Jacob will wrestle with the angel, and he will be wrestling with the angel because he's on his way to meet his brother, and we don't know what will happen when he meets up with Esau. But in that meantime, these 14 years of Jacob living with Laban and the two daughters of Laban that he has given in marriage and their two handmaids who become concubines, all of that is told before we will get to that. And that is the subsequent chapters, which, again, are so delicious in their drama. Because what happens after that, what happens after this very PG description of Jacob asking Laban for Rachel's hand in marriage, and the final consummation of that, when at first he realizes that he's given Leah. sidebar here. So one presumes maybe in the ancient culture, she had a veil on and all those things, and so then, when he sort of wakes up, is he just too drunk to see? Because the only thing that they actually say is that she had weak eyes, and the only thing that you could see even would be her eyes. He's like, how does he not get that this is, that he's been snookered here? And then what happens is that after both women have married Jacob, and the most important thing, we've said this at different times, we were talking about this especially when we were talking about Sarah and Sarah's the long, long time that she waited before God actually blessed her with Isaac in birth, was the most important thing in the ancient world a woman can do is produce an heir. And so Leah produces, over the course of this time, 5. But it's, you have to read the chronology and the rivalry between these two sisters, because it's not just that Leah has 5 sons. She has a son, and they say why he's named that name. It's Reuben, and then another son, and then another son. And like Sarah before, barrenness is always sort of this condition of anxiety. We have all these stories of kind of questions of women's barrenness, right? We have this one. We have Sarah who came before. We have Hannah later on who has Samuel and who herself has a conflict with another co-wife. And so Rachel, though she is beloved by Jacob, knows that her sister Hannah has given him what he needs and wants. And did I say Hannah? I should have said Leah. Thank you. Too many names. Because there's a few more I'm going to throw in here, right? Zilpah and Bilhah. So Leah has given Jacob these sons, which is, the important thing. And so Rachel, in her distress, does the same thing that her grandmother-in-law did, which is to say, well, I have this handmaiden. She will have an heir on my behalf. And so her handmaiden has 2. And so Leah then says, I'm going to up the stakes. I'm going to ask my handmaiden to, and she gives 2 more. And so Leah then sends her oldest son Reuben out to get mandrakes. I'm really not quite sure what mandrakes do. But, and then she has a couple more children. And Rachel is still in the waiting for her child. And even amidst all these children that Jacob has been given by Leah and by Zilpah and by Bilhah, Rachel will eventually have children. She has Joseph. Multicolored coat, right? Favorite. Even though she has given all these children to Jacob, Jacob only sees Rachel. And you can read the bitterness in the text of Leah and all the ways that she has been used and manipulated and rivaled. And we see this same rivalry between Leah and Rachel that we saw between Esau and Jacob. And we have all these elements of our brokenness of humanity right there on display. Not to mention 2 women who had no choice in this, who were given by Laban to his daughters, who then used them in their pawn game and produced more children for Jacob. And in all that, Jacob sees none of them. And it made me think about the blind spots that we have. We studied the book Blind Spot, The Hidden Biases of Good People, a couple years as a book study, and some of the things that we in our society have blind spots about, often kind of around people who are marginalized, issues that are difficult. But one of the things that I thought about as I was thinking about what's some blind spot that we can pay attention to, and how many choices do we have? They're innumerable, right? And then something happened. About a year ago, Mindy from NYAP called this church and said, hey, I work with this organization which is around foster families, and I'd love to come and kind of share what we do and have some information about. And then I said, if you want to, here's a couple places and some things that are going on. We're going to have our Wear Out Festival, and NYAP had a table. And I said also, at that time, I was doing Leadership Lafayette, and we were doing our Community Volunteer Expo. And I said, this is also another place. And NYAP came and had a table there. And then she said, when can I come to First Church? I said, I'll get back with you. Did I actually? I think I talked, yeah. We talked a couple times, and I think that note to call Mindy back is still in a pile of papers under my desk. If there's anything that the biblical narrative, especially in Genesis, tells us is how persistent human beings can be, and I think that hasn't changed. So on Wednesday, we're standing around the office, kind of a quiet week, and somebody walks in, and I'm like, I wonder who that is. And she walks in the office, and I was like, oh, it's Mindy. And Mindy says, just want to check in with you about kind of sharing about NYAP, National Youth Advocates Program. And I'm like, yeah, I know, I'm supposed to call you back. And she's so gracious. She was so kind. And then I thought, children. Unseen children, National Youth Advocates that talks about children in our foster system. And what could be a more deep and challenging blind spot that we as a society have. Like Jacob could not see all these children that he had because he only wanted to see certain ones. It was Jacob and Benjamin, or Joseph and Benjamin, who were his favorites. And in some ways, we do the same thing in our society. We have our favorite children, which might be our children of privilege, and children who are falling behind, falling through the cracks, children who have life circumstances that might demand that they have a different situation, are unseen. I had just heard a story on public radio, and I had to go back and try to remember where it was, and I couldn't remember if it was a national story or a local one. And it turns out, when I sort of Googled it, the first problem was sifting through all the stories about our challenges in the foster system. But I knew it was one that I had heard just within like literally days. And I finally found that on the 15th, if I put the right keywords in, it popped up on the 15th on the weekend edition public radio program. There was a story about the decimation of the foster system in this country. And they actually used Nevada, the state of Nevada, as an example. And the person who spoke from that state's perspective said that the number of foster families that had been active in the foster program had reduced by 50% during the pandemic and has not returned. And I couldn't remember where I heard that statistic, but I asked Mindy about that, and I said, Mindy, what's Indiana like? And she said, yeah, it's the same. So I want to invite Mindy up to come and actually talk a little bit about this blind spot that we have, because it's important. You hold that button down at the top. Come on up, and Mindy, introduce yourself, introduce if you have family here and kind of who you are.
Okay. I'm Mindy Cooney, and my husband Chris is with me. Born and raised here in Lafayette.
And what's NYAP?
National Youth Advocate Program. We're a foster care agency here in Lafayette that take care of kiddos and find homes for these little guys.
And how do you find out when a particular child needs, and how does NYAP sort of intersect with how that information comes through?
Okay. So in the state of Indiana right now, we have 13,000 children in foster care. Some of the kids are placed with relatives. Some of the children are placed in foster homes. Other children are not placed in foster homes or foster with relatives. They are in emergency shelters. And so every day we receive emails of these kiddos that need a home. Sometimes we get 20, we've had as high as 50 come through in a day. Get a little picture of a kid, little background story of what's going on in their life. It's a very small window of what's going on in their life, but it kind of gives you an idea of what's happened to them so far.
Yeah, and so you actually do this pretty often, go around to churches, to civic organizations, et cetera, and just kind of spread the word. This is a real need. You are asking us to see that blind spot, right?
Correct.
And so you reached out to us, and I'm going to make a confession. One of the things that I felt like was, especially a year ago, just the number of people kind of like involved, and is this the kind of church that would do that, right? And I was like, maybe when more people come back, and so we are there, right? And so I felt like it was such a God moment, maybe a little karma, right? That you walked in at that moment and came at a time when it was the right moment to talk about this. And I can't stress that enough.
He knew when to send me.
Exactly. And so one of the things I think about is speak to me about my doubts, right? That whether I actually think that somebody actually would or wouldn't, what would make, what are the ways that we can support this? First, maybe being willing to actually directly be involved in a child's life. What does that look like?
So, to become a foster parent, there is about 30 hours worth of training that you go through. The good news that's happened with COVID, there's not a lot of good that's happened, but one thing, we've done everything virtual, so you can do your training online. So that's nice, not to have to come in person. But we have to do some background checks, those kinds of things, to become a foster parent. But there's other ways to help too.
Yeah.
If you can't be a foster parent, if you can't open your home to a kiddo, that's okay. You could put a sign out in your yard letting people know that we need foster parents. If you have a business, put a sign up at your business. Be willing to volunteer and just come spend some time with these kiddos. You do have to be background checked again to do that, obviously. But just help support, and if you can't be maybe a full-time foster parent, consider about becoming a foster parent to do respite for the kids, short-term placements, to give our foster parents a break, because sometimes these kids just aren't the easiest because they've had so much trauma in their lives.
Right. So I went back to kind of double check, and you actually gave us a list back in 2022 when you had first reached out of some of the things that we can do. And one of those might be just to provide a space where an activity can happen, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
what could that look like?
So we try to have quarterly events for our foster parents and the kids to come do something fun, to kind of be able to help the foster parents and the kids see that they're not alone in this, and to feel that they're not doing this all by themselves. And so we try to get them together 4 times a year, do something fun for the kids to get a little energy out, maybe.
Yeah. And so we certainly could host and make an event like that possible, right?
That would be fantastic.
Yeah, the other question that I have is, I thought of this after we spoke, and one of the things that makes me curious is what made you want to do something like this in terms, this is hard work, right? And how do you sustain yourself?
There's a lot of days I go home and cry. We have cases that are just totally heartbreaking. But I feel like it's important to give a little hope, love, respect, time to these kiddos. So when they come into the office, I try to pour everything I have into them, just to let them know people do care.
Right, because someone has to do it, right?
Yeah.
Someone has to make a difference. So tell us the story about where you've seen hope, where you see that hard work that NYAP does and that you have done, where it's made a difference in someone's life.
So we had 2 twin little children that came into care at 3 months. They have a lot of health needs. And when they came into care, a couple of months after being in care, their mother overdosed and passed away. Their father was incarcerated. And so the foster parents was able to stay in contact with the biological grandmother through this time, and she was able to see the kids. She was older and unable to care for them with all her health needs that they had. In April, the kids were adopted, both of them, by the family. The father, meanwhile, in June, got out of prison, but he's in like a halfway house situation. So the kids still haven't seen him because of where he's living.
Right.
But they have been in contact on the phone. They're only two, but they are full of life and energy, that's for sure. But once he is done with his program, then they will all be able to see each other and stay in contact.
Yeah. And one of the things I think about with that, I mean, just like our Bible story, life is messy. Our humanity kind of flows through all of this. And yet, despite that, God is still inviting relationship building, right? So there's that relationship building of this home that will unconditionally love and care for these children. And the recognition that though some of these other parts of the family that were part of the biological family of these children, while they may not be in a place where they can step in that way, they're still valued. One of the quotes that I heard on that story on public radio, the interviewer asked the representative from the Nevada foster care system, you know, what do you say to a family that knows that they may bring this child into their home, love them, build a relationship with them, and then that child will leave? And he said, I'm glad you asked that question because it can be hard and one has to be prepared for that. But a child can never have too many people loving them. And so I just love that, and I love this invitation, and I love the ways that National Youth Advocates makes it possible for us to care for people, to see people, to interact with people in ways that, one, that we can, right, to give in ways that we can, and to support children who just really probably have unbelievable stories that we will never know. I want to give the last reason why I felt like this was an important story to tell. I imagined that there are bigger churches in the area than ours, bigger churches than the number who are worshiping in 2023 at First Church. And I thought, little old us, you know, what can we do? And we'll get to this, right? And maybe it was sort of my doubt about our capacity that made me drag my feet. Mindy didn't doubt our capacity, and she walked through the door on a Wednesday afternoon to talk to us anyways. Because after this conversation, then she revealed one of the reasons why she came in here. And she said, because you have that sign out there that represents a kind of welcome that not every church family will be able to show. You know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm describing. And so what we have is an ability, because we have cultivated this ability to see, to work hard at maybe doing our best to put some of those blind spots aside. We crane our neck in the mirror of that right-hand side mirror so that we can actually get a better view. And not every organization or person or congregation has made that journey or is willing to. But Mindy shared that is an important part of some of the lives that the children will bring, and maybe there's a special mission inside this larger mission that we can pay attention to. Because as our prayer says, God sees us, and we're invited to see everyone. So Mindy, I want to thank you for all the ways that you see our young people and invite us to see everyone as well. Amen. Thanks be to God.
Would you join me in prayer? We pause this morning, O God, with heavy hearts. We live in the midst of great and abiding love, but also in the midst of deceit and lies. May we be found faithful in all we do. May we speak the truth in love and live lives of love each day. Too often we seek you in the spectacular and the otherworldly. May we see the many inbreakings of your kingdom in the everyday, the ordinary things of life, in our relationships with friends and family, the treasures in the field, the fish gathered in nets. May we be able to answer with a full-throated yes when asked if we have understood your teachings and your call. Lord, we know that you see us, but we ask that you give us your eyes so that we might see as you do too. Make us aware of the blind spots in our lives and give us your heart and your arms that we can reach into those places with your love and compassion to spread grace and mercy and the good news that you have brought us. And hear us this morning, Lord, as we pray together the prayer that Jesus taught us, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. Well, we got lots of good stuff going on and coming up around here. I'm reading off my phone this morning from our events page. If you're not subscribed to our events, you should let Dwayne or I know. We'll give you the contacts. You can get on this list. But we've got a kids chimes choir coming back, starting again, thanks to much work that Kathy and Vanessa are doing. We have a couple scholarship opportunities that you may not have known about. The deadline is the 31st, so if you know any students who need some scholarships for this semester, you can get on that real quick. And we have brunch next week, and that's just a few of the things on here. So there's lots to go off of and lots for us to do. So thank you for all that you do to help make these things possible, and let us get you connected if you want to get plugged in. Let's take a moment this morning and connect with those around us and share the peace and love of Christ. May the peace of Christ be with you.
goodness of God. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I'm surrendered now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I'm surrendered now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me.
All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Yes, I will sing of the goodness of God.
I want to say thank you to Mindy, Melinda for coming today and for sharing. And Melinda will be out in the narthex. There's some table. There's more information. You know, asking to enter into this space can feel daunting. I went and sat down, and Todd said we're going to go to the training, and I'm like, really? And it takes courage. It takes courage to enter into difficult spaces. And so may God give us courage and eyes that are open to see the things that we have not seen, where God is inviting us to be, to act, to live. May we have that courage. May we have that fortitude. May we be able to share always the story of that goodness of God.